So we created the spreadsheet ahead of time. We would say, Johnny's supposed to be on a yellow day today. Tommy's on green. Brennan just threw yesterday, so he's on red. We would almost never let someone go up a level. So like if Brennan was on red the day after throwing 80 pitches and he came and said, Coach, I feel great today, we're not moving him from red to yellow. But what we might do is, let's say he has that red day after he throws, he's supposed to have a yellow day the next day, and then he comes to us and says, Coach, I'm not really feeling very good today. My arm doesn't feel very fresh. And we say, okay, we're going to move you back from a yellow to a red. So it did allow for some flexibility based on how guys' arms felt.
Welcome to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast, where you will get expert, practical baseball coaching advice you can take directly to your next practice. Let's get started. Here's your host, Coach Kyle Nelson.
All right, coaches, welcome back to another episode of the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kyle Nelson. We have an outstanding show for you today, but first, I'd like to introduce you to a little bit about our podcast. I do want to welcome back those of you that are returning listeners. If you have liked what you've heard on our podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. It's going to help other coaches find the show and help us spread the word about some of the great things we're doing for youth travel and high school coaches at Cornerstone. For those of you that are new listeners today, I want to say welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. This podcast is just a little bit different than many of the other great baseball coaching podcasts that are out there right now. Each week, I'm going to give you an in-depth analysis and information on one specific topic that you can take directly back to your practice, your team, or your program to make them better immediately. Each podcast will be about 15 to 20 minutes long, so you can listen during your morning workout while you're mowing the lawn or on your drive to work. We do have several other ways you can interact with the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Coach_K Nelson. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher, so each week's show is sent directly to your mobile device. You can explore our website and blog posts at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com and cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/blog. And for those of you who are really serious, you can join Cornerstone Elite, our premium membership, where I show you exactly how to implement all the great information in a team setting with a small and limited coaching staff. We have over 50 practice plans and growing that can be implemented with just 2 coaches. I explain all of our programming for hitters, infielders, pitchers, and all of our drills, and much, much more. To join today, you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. All right, let's go ahead and get started on today's show. The topic for today is going to be a review of our in-season pitcher usage program that we put into place this year. If you'd like to hear the original podcast about this, it's episode 168. So you can go to cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/168, and that will give you a little bit of a background on exactly what we did this year. If you are an elite member, head into the elite members area, and I give a very thorough description in there of this pitching program and show you exactly how you can implement this with your team. Today's show is episode number 178, and so if you are interested, I can link to those 2 things in the show notes for today, which are at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/178. I'll also put some of our command drills in there for you so that you can take a look at those. I think that those really have been a big part of what we did with this program this year. So I'll give you just a really brief overview of the program. Like I said, if you want some more information to scratch the surface a little bit more, you can go to episode 168, or if you're an elite member, you can get that in the elite members area. And certainly if you are not an elite member, you can join and head in and take a look at the spreadsheet and exactly how we went about doing this and all the protocols we used and things like that. So the basis of this is that each pitcher is given a day, color for each day based on their previous workload and their anticipated workload coming up. So they either get a red, yellow, or green. Red is a full recovery day. Yellow is kind of a medium throwing day, and then green is going to be like a go day. So they're either in a bullpen or in-game throwing or aggressive long toss, pull downs, things like that. Here, I'll talk quickly about some of the things that we really liked about it, and then also some of the issues and problems that we ran into. One of the things that I really liked about it was it helped us manage our pitcher's workload in a relatively easy manner. And so it wasn't like if a pitcher, was on, because you're going to have all your pitchers on different parts throughout the season, right? One pitcher is going to throw Monday, so on Tuesday he's on a recovery, and then on Wednesday maybe he's on a yellow, and then he might be on another yellow or recovery, and then Saturday he's pitching again, so he's on a green. But all the members of your pitching staff are going to be at various different days throughout the week, right? Because then you're probably going to have a pitcher who throws Tuesday, and he's going to be at a different time and a different day than the guy who threw on Monday, who will be at a different time and day than the guy who's going to throw on Thursday. And so I thought that this was a nice way for us to kind of individualize our pitcher training, because really what we'd been doing in the past was kind of everyone is doing the same thing, but they're doing it at varying levels of intensity. And it just wasn't very individualized. And so by creating this spreadsheet, and again, elite members, you have access to the spreadsheet and how we created it and exactly what it is and how to use it. But by creating the spreadsheet, what we were able to do is each day at practice or at games, our pitching coach would simply hand the group of pitchers who were on green, he would hand them the green sheet, and there would be a whole bunch of protocols on there. Some of them were bolded and starred, and those are the ones that they had to do. And the other ones, they got to choose what they wanted to do. So guys who like to throw weighted baseballs could throw weighted baseballs. Guys who like to throw aggressive bullpens in between starts could throw aggressive bullpens in between starts. It was really, if they prefer to do an aggressive long toss to that bullpen, they got the opportunity to do that. So it was kind of individualized within each of the days. So he would have the group for red, the group for yellow, and the group for green. They'd get sheets, and they would basically go and kind of do, I don't want to say do their own thing, but they're working on their own while he's overseeing and monitoring them. So that was what we really liked about it. I did give them the first 45 minutes of practice, and I'll link also to the pitcher first practice episode in there where I talk a little bit about the setup of practice to make this happen. But we did give them about the first 45 minutes of practice in order to get this done. And I felt like that was a positive thing because pitching is an area in our program that we've needed to improve upon. And so we really made sure that we made that a point of emphasis and said, look, if we need to improve on our pitching, then we need to make sure that it is first and foremost in our practices. And so we did that this year, and I think that idea and concept worked out well. A couple things that I did not like about this. Now, we are going to continue doing this. It's just I need to figure out how to change some of these things so that they're not getting in the way of other areas and aspects of our program that I like to do. One area that I did not like about it was that I really loved getting our base running done early on in practice. Now keep in mind that I've got two-way guys. So some of the two-way guys were with me doing our infield, outfield, extra hitting, stuff like that, while some of the other two-way guys are with my pitching coach doing their pitching day. And so we pushed our base running back until we both got done with that initial part, or really till the pitchers were done. And so one of the things I did not particularly like about this was that it moved base running from the place I liked it in practice, which was right at the beginning. So we used to do our warm-up, go right into base running, do all that before we threw. But because our warm-up for pitchers was so throwing specific, I did not have them do it with the entire team. So we had to wait until after they were done, which is 45 minutes to an hour into practice to get our base running. And then quite honestly, some days I felt like we just completely skipped base running altogether because maybe pitchers took an extra 15, 20 minutes. And so we were a little bit late on our practice time. I do like to get our practices done in 2 to 2 hours and 15 minutes. And so I didn't like that it was pushing base running back to that point, and that a lot of times we ended up skipping it altogether. So that was one definite negative that I found. The other thing that I found with it was you try as much as you can to give players individual weaknesses and to say, hey, here's, you need to work on spinning breaking balls, and you need to work on changeups, and your velocity is low, so we need to play long toss, and maybe if you're not throwing very much in games, we need to do some pull downs, weighted balls, things like that. And so you hope that by giving players those, some of those, that assessment of what they need to do, what they need to improve on, you would hope and think that they would kind of gravitate towards those areas in practice when given the opportunity to. But what we found was that a lot of them would just kind of do whatever their friend was doing if they were in the same group. And so you might have a kid who has a really good breaking ball and it needs to work on some command or needs to work on his pickoff move or whatever the case may be, doesn't need to spend that much time working on his breaking ball. Pairing up with his friend who needs to work on his breaking ball a lot, and so they spend 15-20 minutes spinning breaking balls, and it greatly benefits the one pitcher and maybe only moderately benefits the other pitcher. So that was an area where I felt like it needed to have some improvement as well. And so I think next year what we're going to do is do a few more mandated things where we're not giving players as much choice. Our pitching coach might simply say, at the beginning of a day, here's your sheet, you have to do the bolded and starred things, but these 2 pitchers, you need to do breaking ball work today. These 3 pitchers need to throw long toss. And so maybe mandate a few more things within each of them while still giving them some freedom to try to work on the things that they need to or want to work on in that regard. Something else that I did like about this was the way that we managed our two-way players with it. I felt was outstanding. That's been one of the things I've realized over the last couple of years, is that what we're asking our two-way players to do with their arms is completely unnatural. And so, let's say that you have a pitcher who's one of your better pitchers who also plays a premium position for you. Maybe they're your third baseman or your center fielder or your shortstop, hopefully not your catcher. But what we're asking them to do with their arms is really unnatural, right? They're going to throw a game with tons of high-intent throws, and then they might be out at the field the very next day having to make high-intent throws from, say, third base or whatever. And as I look back at my own playing career, I realize that that's an area that really probably contributed to my arm injuries. It wasn't necessarily the number of innings I threw, because I threw a lot of innings, but to me, I think it was more what I did between starts where I was playing third base. I was making max intent throws all the time from third base, because if you're getting looked at by colleges to play third base and they show up and you field a ground ball in between innings, you don't want to take it easy on your arm. You want to show off your arm to them, never mind the fact that you threw 105 pitches the day before or 2 days before. And so I really think that what we're asking our two-way players to do is very unnatural. And so this helped us monitor their workload also, because we talked to them a lot about, if you are a two-way player, here's how you manage things. If they were on a red day and they were a two-way guy, they would either not play like the next day. So let's say they started one day, we would give them the next day off entirely. Or if we could work them into a designated hitter role, we would do that. Or if we could switch their position to a lighter throwing position, we would also do that. So, that might be like taking your right fielder and moving him to left, or a third baseman and moving him to first, or a third baseman and moving him to second. Something along those lines, so that we could minimize the number of high-intensity throws they were making the day after they threw. So we also then would include, in yellow days, two-way players would go over, and some of their high-intent throws would then be from their positions. So they might play a little long toss before and then join the infielders and make some high-intent throws that way, and then join the outfielders and make some high-intent throws that way. But on red days, they knew that when they fielded a ground ball at their position, they turn around and drop it in the bucket. They don't make that throw across the infield. If they're in an outfield drill and they have to make a throw, it's not at high intent, or again, they catch the ball and then there's a bucket out there, they turn around and drop the ball in the bucket. So they know when they're on those red days that they're not making high intent throws in practice their second position. And they also know that if they're on a yellow day, that they have to back off of some of what they're doing in their pitching time, because they are going to have some high intent throws on in their second position. Another thing that I liked was it made sure that every single day our players were getting a proper warm-up and a proper recovery, because on every single one of those sheets, the mandated things at the beginning were the proper warm-up, and at the end were our proper recovery days. And so our proper recovery routine. And so I do think that was something else that was really, really beneficial to them, was it just emphasized how important a quality warm-up was and how important a quality recovery was for them, and also to monitor and think about their throws. Last thing that I really liked about this system was it gave players flexibility based on how they were throwing on a given day. So we created the spreadsheet ahead of time. We would say, Johnny's supposed to be on a yellow day today, Tommy's on green, Brennan just threw yesterday, so he's on red. We would almost never let someone go up a level. So like if Brennan was on red the day after throwing 80 pitches and he came and said, "Coach, I feel great today," we're not moving him from red to yellow. But what we might do is, let's say he has that red day after he throws, he's supposed to have a yellow day the next day, and then he comes to us and says, "Coach, I'm not really feeling very good today. My arm doesn't feel very fresh." And we say, "Okay, we're going to move you back from a yellow to a red." So it did allow for some flexibility based on how guys' arms felt. We also got to know a little bit about how our guys liked to get fresh for their outing. So some guys would like to throw, at least one green day in between their starts, and our starts were usually a week apart. So usually we had a Monday starter, a Monday starter, a Tuesday starter, and a Thursday starter for our conferences, for our conference games. And so usually they were a week apart, and some guys like to have one green in between. Some guys like to have two greens in between. Some guys needed 2 red days after their start. Some guys, didn't want any green days in between those two to try to feel as fresh as they could. So it let us kind of tinker around with some of that and let them give us feedback on how they felt and what they wanted to do individually. So that was another thing that I thought was really, really positive about it, is it got our pitchers taking some ownership over their arm health and what they were doing with it. So I hope that helps and gives you some idea. Again, if you go back to episode number 168, you'll be able to find exactly what we did and how we set that up. And then if you are an elite member, go into the elite pitching area, and in there's a video and a spreadsheet that shows you exactly how to set it up, as well as the sheet for the different protocols that we use. So what do we do on a red day? What do we do on a green day? What do we do on a yellow day? And you can see those exact protocols. We're going to change those just a little bit for this year, but for the most part, we were pretty happy with the things that we allowed our players to do and the intensities that they were doing them at. I'm also going to include on the show notes for today, which you can find again at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/178. I'm going to include a link to a podcast I did on managing two-way players. It's a little bit of an older one, so I hadn't developed this system just yet, but it will give you some insight into some of the ways that we manage our two-way guys to try to keep them as healthy as they can. Because remember, at the bottom of that pitching pyramid, the base of all pitching is arm health. They have to be healthy, and if we run them ragged throughout the year and then expect them to be fresh and perform for the playoffs, that's not realistic. I think what we had this year when we went to the playoffs was we had pitchers who were confident, we had pitchers who felt good, and we had pitchers who were comfortable in their routines. And we got good pitching throughout the second half of our year, and I think that these routines really had something to do with it. So thanks a lot for listening. Have a wonderful week, and never stop learning.
Thanks for listening to the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast. If you liked what you heard here and you're looking to take your team, your program, and your coaching career to the next level, there is no better resource than a Cornerstone Elite membership. Get everything you need to run an amateur team, including dozens of drills, games, practice plans, e-courses, and much more, right at your fingertips, wherever you have an internet connection. Check it out today at cornerstonecoachingacademy.com/cornerstone-elite. We will be back next week with another great episode on the Cornerstone Coaching Academy podcast.